All right, we are live. I apologize. You're having a little audio issues there, as can happen, right, Alicia?
It always happens. Every day, I think it happens on some platform.
Yes, it happens. That's right. So, well, you guys can hear Alicia McLain. She is our guest here on the July edition of the Agile Online Meetup. So I want to first thank her, but also too, I want to give everyone a quick update. So the Agile Online Summit is coming up October 25th through the 27th, and I will drop some info in the chat. And the call for speakers is currently open. So I want everyone to know that, and we'll have a link on that. But Alicia, you have a track coming up for the Agile Online Summit. So tell us about that track you have coming up in October.
Yeah, I am super excited about this track. So I submitted a presentation during the call for papers to the Agile 2021 conference. And I had this idea about facilitation. Now, that talk didn't get picked up, but I still am so passionate about this idea. And the title of my talk was Facilitation, the I in DE&I. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what my theory is that when we have good facilitation, when we use first of all, when we're in a full facilitator stance, meaning we have an unbiased and neutral approach to how we facilitate teams, and we use techniques to hear all of the voices in whatever conversation we're facilitating, that's the magic. That's the magic. And so what I'm super excited about is hearing from all of the makers out there, if you will, people that have all these new ideas or concepts. It doesn't have to be anything amazing. Just how do you facilitate sessions where you get to hear all of the voices that are present, that you acknowledge the fact that people have differences in how they show up and how they participate. And what's that technique? What's that little secret sauce that you have and that you're bringing? So that's what I'm excited about. And I'm looking forward to everybody throwing their name into that hat with these new ideas.
Yes, I like that. That's really good. And you talked about a lot there, Alicia, because as you talk about because I think, you talked about the whole title, but even like we could break down each one of those words. I think, for instance, like facilitation. And I am thinking about, some places that I've worked where facilitation meant something different than what a lot of us in this Agile space think it means. And
I am so glad you said this. And so that's exactly why I put that talk in at Agile 2021, because so when you think about coaching competency in the Agile coaching domain, facilitation is one of those wedges of competency. And so my talk was specifically to address exactly what you said. I'm not certain that people really understand what facilitation is. And so in my talk that I did, I actually got a chance to deliver that talk for a PMI group. Cool. And in my talk, I describe what facilitation is and what it's not. And then I talk about what do we mean by diversity? And then I look at a diversity wheel and we look at the dimensions of diversity. We talk a bit about equity. What do we mean there? And then I talk a bit about inclusion. What do we mean there? And so the idea is that when we have good facilitation techniques, we bring all of that to the table, and we get much more clear on what we mean by facilitation. Because I'm a recovering project manager. I still have my PMP, right? And so in the old days, facilitation had a very, I will just say, heavy-handed kind of approach. And it was largely in part because I didn't really understand what facilitation was then either, right? The idea is really to be sort of in the background, right? When facilitation is done really well, most people just come out of the meeting saying, gosh, that was amazing, but they don't really point to anything. When facilitation is awful, people are like, that was the worst, and they start going down a list of why it was the worst.
Yes. That is so true. So I just want to point out, if anybody has any questions, feel free to share them in the chat. I'll be monitoring it. I think it was Shri there gave us a +1 on recovering project manager. So there's probably a few of those out there. I know I've been there myself. So feel free to share anything in the chat. But just to kind of, as you mentioned, so you talked a little bit about facilitation, about that. You mentioned the word unbiased. So what are some other things to kind of dig a little deeper on that facilitation topic.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So Luria just put something really interesting in the chat, and finding the 2% right, or if you're looking at positive intelligence and mental fitness, just acknowledging that whatever someone has said, there's even a 10% right in what they've said. And so as a facilitator, how do you hold the space for everybody to contribute? And so one of the things that I think is important to realize is that there's certain things that can add to or take away from good facilitation. And in the talk that I gave, I talk about word choices and language. So to Lorea's point about the 10% or the 2% right or the 10% right, when someone makes a comment and they contribute, how do you as a facilitator, what's the language you choose to include them and have them continue to participate? Or do you say, no, that's not right?
Yes.
And then so that shuts them down, right?
Yeah.
So I refer to language choices as a facilitator. I refer to just some facilitation techniques. So I talk about planning poker. I talk about liberating structures. Yep. All these different techniques. So I refer to different techniques. I talk about language. I talk about the use of silence in facilitation. And so how do you use silence in facilitation? Hi, Larissa. Good to see you. Larissa's a coaching buddy of mine. I see these my friends showing up on the list here. That's great.
Awesome.
And so, so it's different techniques. So language, silence, facilitate. I actually even refer to one called the 6 thinking hats. That's not something that really anybody knows about. And so I threw that out there in my talk as a way to kind of expand people's toolkit in terms of different strategies that they could use for facilitating and bringing all of the voices to the table. This kind of reminds me of deep democracy from the ORSC practice. When you talk about hearing all the different voices, what are the ways that you can use facilitation techniques that hear from everybody? And we have an especially important challenge right now because we're all in a virtual space, right? Yep. So how do we do that and make sure that everybody is participating?
So Shri has an interesting question here, alluding to how much domain expertise in the topic of discussion is important in the art of facilitation.
Love this question.
Yes.
Right. So let's talk about that, right? So when we're looking at agile coaching competency and you look at that crosswing diagram where you've got coaching and facilitation on one side and you've got mentoring and training on the other side. On the mentoring and training side, you have to have domain expertise because you can't train somebody on something you don't know about, and you can't mentor anybody, if you don't have any content authority in whatever the subject is, it's hard to mentor somebody. Yes. On the other side of that crosswing diagram where you have facilitation and coaching, the less you know about the domain, the better facilitator and coach you are, because you don't have your own thinking and your own story wrapped up in the facilitation. It's so much easier to stay unbiased and neutral when you don't know squat about what they're talking about. This is why I can coach like, Elon Musk or I don't have to know about what you're doing to be an effective coach. I just have to stand in unbiased, neutral, and a curious space. And when I do that, I can do some amazing facilitation. That's some good stuff there. I know I've seen this a lot in some companies where they assume the facilitator should know, like you said, they assume that. And I think it kind of comes back to what you're saying, some of those recovering project managers. And Yeah. The other thing I'll say about that too, in cultures that assume that the facilitator should know, I think part of that is what gets in the way of that, I think, is the fear of the person doing the facilitation, because you really don't have to know everything about what's being discussed. But what you do have to do is be unbiased. You do have to find a way to bring everybody in. You do have to have a way to ask the kind of thought-provoking and powerful questions that stimulate whatever the outcome is. of the meeting. And you still have to have the structures that put the meeting in, that get the meeting set up. So one of the things that I find is that there's 3 things that are typically missing from meetings: the purpose, the objective, and the agenda. So when all 3 of those things are missing, then everybody's looking at you saying, how come you don't know what we're doing?
What's going on here?
Exactly. What am I here for? Why did I even accept this meeting?
Yes. So Larissa asks, what about the stakeholders that aren't in the room? How do we bring those voices in?
Yeah. That's a really great question. And so I know Larissa from Orsk. And the way that I would bring that in is kind of using a bit of a deep democracy kind of a concept. And in deep democracy, what we're doing is we're hearing from the voices in the room, and then we acknowledge the fact that there are players that are important in the system, but they're not in the room. And so we'd ask the question. So if I was a facilitator and there were stakeholders that were part of this conversation, but not in the room, I would say, I would just create the space to hear from their voices. And that could be people that could represent their voices, people that understand what's important for them. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But I think the big point is don't leave them out. And don't leave their voices out.
Yes.
Yeah.
They can get left out or overlooked, totally. I guess. And that's very problematic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you also talk about DEI. So first, diversity. Kind of define how do you define that? Because you mentioned you have this talk that you put together and you've given a couple times. So how to break us down on for you, Alicia?
Yeah. So what I present is a diversity wheel, and for people that aren't familiar with that, I can find a link for that and put that into the chat, or if you have any sort of description of this podcast after, I can provide it for that. But I show a diversity wheel, and what was interesting in the couple times that I did this presentation, most everybody in the room hadn't seen that before. So this was a great new tool for people. And it wasn't a complex diagram. This is a diversity wheel diagram that I've been using since the 90s. Because this DE&I story is not new for me. I've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion since the early 90s in my career. And so that's when I was first introduced to this diversity wheel. And so it just shows different dimensions of diversity. And it starts the conversation about what do we mean by the differences in people. And what I invite people to do in the presentation that I do is I invite people to add dimensions to it, or add just add dimensions to the wheel that weren't listed there, so that they can start to really think about what are the considerations when you're thinking about differences. Yeah.
That's probably, I'm guessing those are probably some interesting conversations that can come about when you facilitate that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what else was really interesting when I did it in these 2 different forums is we started talking about digital diversity, right? So how people show up to these virtual environments, and what platforms they're using, or what skills they have with whatever digital tools you're using. Is someone coming in on their phone or an iPad? So see, when you're facilitating, you got to think about all that. And I always forget about the people coming in on their phones, because the stuff that I lay out is not exactly phone friendly. So that really reminded me of digital diversity, and how whatever I'm creating in my facilitation message needs to also include, can somebody participate easily from their phone, or at all, from their phone, from their tablet, from their, whatever that thing is. So that was a really great conversation the couple times that I've led this. Yeah.
That's a new one for me, digital diversity. And it makes so much sense, especially now, as we're talking about it, like, people are working remote wherever they're at. They might have various issues. They might have audio issues, as we had earlier, right? So we all experience these, so we need to be ready.
Always. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I prepare for a presentation, I have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. So of course, something's not going to work, right? So what do I do when that thing doesn't work? And so, because sometimes I can have some, throughput issues, right? So if the whole Zoom blows up, what's next, right? We just keep going. The first thing I'll say as a facilitator that I've really worked on is that just know that something could happen. Have a plan B, and don't panic.
Yeah.
Don't panic. Every time, yeah, when your hair is on fire, now you've triggered everybody else, right? Everybody else is triggered, right? So I just know that something could happen, and I actually just lay it out there when we're starting like I do a lot of digital online trainings, and so when I start that training as a facilitator, I say, just so that you know, we could have some throughput issues, and when we do, here's Plan B, and here's Plan C. If the audio blows up or if the video blows up, we're just going to keep moving. We're going to take a deep breath and we're going to keep moving.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I was just doing a presentation just yesterday, and they were using I'm used to Zoom, but they were using Ring Central, and I was on my Mac and it didn't have permissions to show something. And I was like, okay, but luckily there was, I didn't have slides, but it was something else. But it's just like right to your point. We need to think about that as presenters and facilitators, that things can happen.
Things can happen. And I know I get invited to different client meetings. And so I'm a big old Zoom fan. So I know Zoom backwards and forward. But let's get on Microsoft Teams. I'm like, I don't even know where anything is. So, just trying to, Again, don't panic. I just roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So good, Alicia. So good. Yeah. So next is equity. So how do you define that?
Yeah. It's interesting. I had this graphic in my presentation that talked about equity, and there was equality and equity. And the way the visual went for equality is there was a fence and there were people standing on different blocks so they could try to see over the fence. That was equity was everybody had a block to stand on. I'm sorry, equality. Everybody had a block to stand on. The thing is that these people were different heights.
Yep.
So equity was everybody had something to stand on where they could actually all see over the fence.
Yes. And have not the same view.
Yeah. Everybody had the same view. So that's how I describe equity in my presentation. Yeah. And so it's thinking about what's a way as a facilitator that I create not just an awareness of the diversity here so that I can make sure all voices are heard. What does equity look like in my presentation? As a facilitator, what does that look like? And then, of course, inclusion is what we'll go to next, but it's how do I make sure everybody can feel a part of what's going on? Yeah. That's such an interesting question, Tom, because what came up for me is, there's a difference between facilitating when you have a group of 10 people. The DE&I piece, you can think about the diversity. What I like to think about is the different learning styles, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. And how do I bring everybody to the table using one of those mediums? Because one of those mediums is going to be their key learning style.
Yep.
And then when I think about, equity, how do I level the playing field so that everybody has a clear view of what's happening? And then when I think about inclusion, there's a big difference between 10 people and 110 people, right? Yeah. So what's a way as a facilitator that you have everybody feel part of what's going on? And the way that I do that as a speaker, because I do public speaking too, I've done keynotes and conference presentations. The way that I feel like I do that best, because I've had people, rooms with people, 75 people, 175 people, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
The way that I feel like I facilitate those sessions where everybody feels included is through storytelling. Storytelling in the way that you present. If there's a storytelling quality to it, people feel like they're you're talking to them. You know what I mean? So people feel included. So that's the inclusion part. What's the technique that you use where people feel included?
Yeah. The stories are so important. And especially I find in organizations, sometimes those stories are used for good and sometimes they're used for, bad purposes, but they're they're very helpful in how we, I guess as humans spread knowledge. The story goes so much further than, I might share a fact with you and you're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. But if I tell you a story, that's something it's going to lodge in your memory and you're going, oh yeah, I remember when Tom told me that story.
Yeah. And, you bring up a really great point about stories that are used for good and stories that are used for evil. And so you're always going to have that person, say this is a meeting at an organization, you're always going to have that person that likes to hang on to those negative stories, right? Yeah. So how do you, as a facilitator, acknowledge the 10% right in what that person's saying and get off that negative freight train. Because you could just crash an entire meeting into a wall by letting that negativity just continue so how do you acknowledge the 10% right, diffuse the negative triggering, right? And then keep the conversation going and productive.
That's good.
So many different techniques in facilitation. I don't mind someone that comes in with, some negative diatribe, because I do know how to acknowledge the 10% right. What I like about that idea is, and here's what it brings up for me, and let's get off of the negativity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And that comes to us from not only CTI, but it also comes to us from positive intelligence. It's part of the innovate power of the sage. It's what I like about that idea, which is very improv, right? So yes, and what I like about that idea is what it brings up for me is, and then you just move it back to the positive. And if they want to keep going, just keep acknowledging what you like about the idea. Not I love that whole idea, because I don't love that whole idea.
Yes.
But there's a 10% right in there that I do that we can work with. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Because I think that's something a lot of times people run into issues like that, and they're like,
always,
how do I try some things that don't work?
Up?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, come on, enough.
Yeah. Uncle. Yeah, right. Well,
almost,
but here's the thing. This person's part of the system, right? And even what they're bringing, there's something in there that the system needs to hear. And so we don't want to shut the person down. What we want to do is acknowledge the 10% right and keep it in a way where it can be productive.
Yeah. It reminds me, I was listening to Bob Galen talk about this recently, and he brought up, kind of how we need to honor, like as you come in to make a transformation, you need to honor the past. And I've seen people who will come in and say, what you're doing here is all wrong. You need to change everything. It's like, well, that's really going to engender you to them.
Well, I'll tell you, what a way to get an entire organization of people triggered, right? And all you do is make your work as a coach harder when you don't honor the work that they've done to get to where they are, and take pieces of that and say that what we're about to do is part of your effort of continuous improvement around the practices that you've started. Let's keep going and let's see what you learn with this new perspective or this new tool or whatever the thing is. So right. Bob was spot on with that.
Yeah. He's always got some good advice, I think. So,
yes.
So Alicia, you're creating this track for the summit. Tell us about you talked a little bit about kind of describing what your thinking is, but tell us about maybe some of your goals and maybe some of the conversations you see this track creating, or maybe you having.
Yeah. I'm really looking for in this track, really people who want to bring to the table the techniques that they have used to really do exactly what we talked about, right? Consider the diversity, look at the equity, and include all the voices in whatever it is they're doing, whether it's teaching a class, whether it's coaching a team, whether it's doing public speaking, if it's in person, if it's virtual, it doesn't matter. What are the techniques that you do to consider these three things, these three areas, diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what are the techniques that you use? Just like I brought up the 6 thinking hats. Like I said, no one's even heard of that. Well, what else is out there? What else is out there that people are using? And what I would love to see happen as an outcome is for people that attend the talks in this track to not just come away with like this little toolkit, but actually, the diamond plate box of tools. I want them to walk away with some more tools where they can really up their facilitation game and really distinguish themselves as facilitators. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you talked about this a little bit earlier, Alicia, that sometimes when somebody does facilitation right, that you don't, it's kind of hard to pin on it, but when you talk to us a little bit more about that it's facilitation is kind of like maybe like the air for humans, that we breathe it in, but we don't always notice it, right?
Yeah. You don't walk, well, sometimes you do. I was going to say, you don't walk into the room and say, oh, the air is especially interesting and nice in here. You don't notice the air. But if there's no air in the room, you're like, WTF, I can't breathe, right? So,
Yes.
so I think facilitation is the same way. When
Mhm.
facilitation is great, it's just like the air in the room. People
Yeah.
just walk away feeling like, boy, that was a great use of my time,
Mhm.
or wow, I really learned something there, or gee, I really felt really included and I felt like I could participate, whatever the thing is.
Mhm.
And so what are the tools that you can use to create that concept of
Mhm.
being effective, but not being like a sledgehammer?
Yeah.
Does that, yeah, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah.
Too forceful.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing, so as you talk about that, Alicia, as we want to facilitate, say we have a meeting coming up, and how much of that is like preparation and knowing the team, and then how much, because I'm guessing there's a kind of a line of where there's things you can do in the meeting, but then there's things you have to get ready beforehand to really pull those, know what things you need to do.
That's a great question. And what that brings up for me is a session that I facilitated recently with a client of mine. We were doing some visioning work. So we had done this is organizational transformation, and this is my phase 2, where we're starting to take a look at the data that we got back from the surveys, and you're starting to vision for yourself what does agility look like for you,
Yeah.
right? And so we were doing some visioning work, and what I realized is that the question that I asked them, they were like stuck on it. And this is an IT department, and this is what I frequently find with IT departments is because they got too many inputs, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to keep the focus and keep them there. So knowing that as a facilitator, there's preparation you can do ahead of time. So even though I did that preparation ahead of time, they still were stuck. So what I immediately moved to was a liberating structure. All right, we're going to stop what we're doing. I'm going to have you do this first. We're going to do 1, 2, 4, all. And we just moved right into that. See, I pulled that tool out of my toolkit. It opened them up like this. So we were able to move on because they literally were like deer in the headlights and they couldn't move forward. But so part of it is let me prepare ahead of time. And what I like to do is sort of imagine an experience. So when I'm preparing ahead of time, I just imagine, if I was in the room, what would I want to do? How would I want to participate? How would I want to be involved? How do I bring in all the different learning styles? How do I engage a group of people that are constantly distracted? What does that look like? And then if that doesn't work, what am I pulling out of my toolkit on the fly? But if you don't have any tools in the toolbox, then you're deer in the headlights with them, right? So that's what this is. Some is preparation ahead of time, and some of this, what are all the new tools that I'm going to get that I can just in the moment bring in.
So there's a bit of preparation, but kind of as you mentioned before, a bit of improv maybe where you have to try some things.
Absolutely. You have to have agility in your facilitation.
Yes. Very well played. Very well played. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So Shri is bringing up an important thing here. Getting to know the stakeholders and having some prior conversations before the workshop you facilitate can be super helpful. So to know what you're getting into and the people's motivations are important for me, he says. Excuse me.
So it's interesting because Shri is almost sounding like a product owner. And what that question reminded me of is this concept of anima washi. It's a Japanese term for meeting before the meeting. And so it's this idea that you do get a sense about, what's driving people and what, because then you need to know, well, gee, do I need to bring my small toolkit to the meeting, or do I need to roll in my toolkit that has 4 wheels on it? Because there's going to be some stuff. The other thing I'll say too, when I think about product ownership and this idea of the meeting before the meeting, is that especially if somebody has a particularly, if they have a particularly triggered reaction to whatever's going on, you probably don't want that in your meeting. So the extent that you can sort of let them ventilate ahead of time. That comes to us from ORSC. Yes. Let's ventilate ahead of time. Let's hit, on the Instapot, let's hit the pressure release button. Let that pressure off, because that doesn't lead to a productive meeting. And so we want to make sure that that person can be heard. They can get whatever it is they need to get in terms of that pressure release. And then now they can be a productive, because here's the thing, they want to be a productive participant. They're just triggered, right? And so how do we help them sort of get themselves off that ledge before we can get into this meeting together with other people? So, because
we don't want triggered people in our meetings, and that can be
problematic. Well, especially because there's levels of skill in facilitation, right? And if you're skilled at dealing with all those people triggered at the same time, that's great. But I'll also say that no matter how skilled you are at facilitating, you're still human. And so everybody else's triggered response, it can also, you got to be a Jedi black belt to not get triggered by everybody in that room, right? So yeah, so just so let them ventilate before the meeting.
Good advice. Good advice. Oh,
yeah, I can't even tell you how many times I've done that. Yeah. Yeah.
Shri really says important. +1 to improv, +1 to storytelling, +1 to Nimawashi. How do you say, is it Nimawashi?
Nimawashi. Yeah. Nimawashi. Meeting before the meeting. And gosh, I learned that back in the 90s when I was doing my DE&I work. And it was because we were leading these meetings around, it was sort of organizational change, but it was around diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was my first work in organizational change. And so it was a lot of meeting with people to kind of see where they were before you brought them into a forum where they would like take a stick of dynamite and throw it into the whole meeting. And now you got all that, the shrapnel of that to deal with, right? Yeah. So yeah, a lot of Nimawashi.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Alicia, we don't have much time here, but I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to thank everybody for sticking around here with us and asking lots of good questions. I'm looking forward to this track coming up in October. So excited to see. I know, like I mentioned, the call for speakers is out. So make sure you check out that link that we posted before and put in something with Alicia's track. There's lots of other good tracks too, but I know we want to spotlight on her today and really appreciate her time for joining us and sharing this track, because I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to seeing the conversations that come out of this, and really appreciate everyone's time today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. I am really looking forward to it too. I'm going to drop my LinkedIn in the chat here. So for everybody or anybody that has not already connected, I invite you to connect on LinkedIn. And I have been posting the call for papers out on LinkedIn. And so I will continue to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate it. And we hope everyone has a great rest of your day and good weekend and enjoy things. I know, Alicia, you're out in is it Utah now is where you're at? Is that
Actually,
right?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
We moved from Utah.
You're traveling
we'll be in
all
Colorado.
Over. I'm so jealous. You're having a great, fun summer vacation.
Yes. We'll be in Colorado for the whole summer in different spots, but we'll be in Colorado.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hopefully you can enjoy it this weekend.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you later, and we'll have information about our next meetup coming soon. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.